Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. I am Aaron, and I'm with the other Who Dat Jedi. I don't know, we sound like a gang. If we get more, we could be the Who Dat Jedi Council, and then others could be the Who Dat Jedi Knights. Maybe our listeners are the Who Dat Jedi Padawans. I don't know. I digress. But with me, as always, is Fredo and Dave. How you guys doing?
All right.
Are you getting excited for Halloween?
What are we doing for Halloween?
Are we getting excited for Halloween? Dave and his wife were showing us, and it wasn't X-rated or anything, but they're showing us their Halloween costumes. Do you guys always dress up every year for Halloween?
No, it's been kind of haphazard. It's really difficult to coordinate that and get the kids on the same page and do the whole thing. It's like, okay, let's just make sure each kid gets the costume that they want, but we've never been able to really get the whole family on the same page, which is sort of like the goal or the dream, but it's not going to happen.
So what are the kids going as?
Oh man.
Sorry, I put you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, man. Like, I'm totally like blanking on this right now.
Well, I can tell you while you're thinking about it, Brittany and I did a couple's costume once, and it was about probably 3 years ago. And is when, remember the Chewbacca lady, that video went viral, and her mask, she was just laughing the whole time. Well, I got one of those masks, and I got a Chewbacca onesie, and then we got Han Solo's blaster and a holster. So Britt went as Han Solo and I went as Chewbacca. And that was our couple's costume. I guess one year I was she was a witch and I was the killer bunny rabbit from Monty Python. And the amount of people down in the corridor who were like, "Oh, it's the Easter bunny." It's like, I have fangs. B, I got blood all over my chest, and I have the holy hand grenade around my neck. It's like, what messed up Easter bunny did you get, when you were a kid? But anyway, so that was
run away.
Yeah, I should have said I had big, nasty, pointy teeth. Yeah, so.
Now, remember there was one year we were suggesting that maybe you and Britt could go as Princess Buttercup and Wesley, and Scott Colesby, our friend, would go as Inigo Montoya and not go as Fezzik.
We still need to do that. It's not going to be this year, obviously, but we still need to. So, yeah, we're down because I've got the beard, and all I have to do is get a mask. So it's all good.
The other kind of mask.
Yeah. So Dave, did you figure out what your kids are going as yet?
Yeah, because my wife told me, because she can keep track of this stuff and I can't. So that my youngest is a unicorn princess with like a light up sparkly dress thing. Nathan is going as Venom. And
that's why you can't get the whole family on the same page for anyway, keep going.
No, yeah, he's always the villain. Like, 1 year he was Kylo Ren, and another year I think he was Darth Vader. Yeah, he's always the villain. So this year he's going as the anti-hero, Venom, and Liv is I think just a black cat. So
you need to put Janet Jackson on just replay over and over again.
Yeah, we're introducing her. Like, we've been showing her music videos from our youth, just to try to get her more of a robust musical education. And she has not been shy about telling us which of the songs are good and which aren't. So.
And your heart breaks every other time. Is that what it is?
About. We're batting about 500.
All right. Well, cool. Well, let's get into some trivia here and get our brains wrapped around Star Wars. I'll talk what we're going to talk about later after we do trivia, because they all just kind of go right into each other here. But so, time for some trivia. And Dave, you're going to go first. Ooh. How many horns protrude from the head of the average Gamorrean guard? Not the above average or below average, but the average Gamorrean guard. How many horns? I have to look at an action figure here because I don't know the answer to this.
I think I'm going to go with 3.
It is actually 2. So the action figure is accurate. Okay.
I figured there was one in the back, like they were trying to trip me up or something.
I'm smarter than the average Gamorrean guard. Oh, sorry. Anyway, I love that. The average Gamorrean guard. Who writes these? All right, Fredo. I have a rule that I have to go with the first one I saw. Do it. Oh, so God.
This can be good or bad. Let's go with it.
What planet is shown baking under twin suns?
Let's give everybody a minute to consider it. And then we're going to go with Tatooine.
Oh, my gosh. Really? I mean, yeah, it's like...
Yeah, whenever you say that, you preface that, it's either going to be a really difficult question about some tertiary character's last name, or it's going to be something so simple that we're all going to go like, really?
You do tend to get those questions. So you were due for that's not even a softball. That's like, I don't know, silver platter.
T-ball.
All right. T-ball. All right. Well, mine is just about equal of a softball. Well, who blasts Darth Vader's wingman in the Death Star trench? That is Han Solo. Oh, I have to share this now. Maybe you didn't see it on Twitter, but last week's episode, we talked about how the prequels has shifted our, focus and has enhanced the original trilogy. And the one I came up with after we hit stop on the recording was Darth Vader shooting R2-D2 in the trench run in A New Hope. I mean, now all droids look the same, kind of thing, like except for a color scheme, and you're flying through space. And it was always one of those things I found. I was like, man, he's a bad shot if he hits the droid helmet when the droid dome when the X-wing was clearly in his sights. He's a bad shot. But maybe it was that's R2. He's seen everything. Snitches get stitches. I don't know.
Well, when you consider, R2 has seen him from when he was a little boy on Tatooine through the Clone Wars, knows who he was married to. So if anybody's going to spill has all of the beans to spill or all the tea to spill, it's R2.
Now,
I had I don't know. Did you have more to say about that?
No, I really don't. It's just go ahead.
So another thing that come out of last week's episode, we had one of our listeners reach out to us about our discussion about the Disney Plus rollout of a potential trailer for the Book of Boba Fett. And this was from Tim Ruppert, and I wanted to give him a shout out because he is a regular listener and often interacts with us on social media. And he said he did not hear us talk about the marketing aspects to that potential rollout date, because that is a time when parents are shopping and Star Wars fans are shopping for holiday gifts. And there could be some Book of Boba Fett style offerings to drop in the month of November.
Very, very possible. Here's the glass is half empty response to that is that, who knows how much the shelves are going to be filled up with anything given our supply chain, mess that's going on right now.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those toys, and we're going to be talking about some, a lot of those toys are coming from the direction where all these boats are sitting offshore that can't get in. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, see, I thought that was a nice tie-in to our main topic today. That might be a little teaser for our audience there. But you're right.
I think he's right. He's spot on. You put this in a place because Book of Boba Fett's going to start when it's too late to buy Christmas and Hanukkah gifts,
it's after.
Right. So, but you launch a trailer and get all these kids excited about Boba Fett and Fennec Shan. Yeah, you could have a lot of. I mean, imagine if we would have seen Grogu, or well, I mean, well, not, we did see Grogu before Christmas time, but there were no toys. Now I'm sure that they have.
They didn't want to spoil it. Yeah.
So
Okay.
just FYI, before we do move off of it, I want to mention that Ming-Na Wen did reveal that she shot a promo for Book of Boba Fett while filming another project down in Mexico. She said she couldn't do anything, but that it's safe to assume that it will be for Disney Plus Day.
Cool.
So the Book of Boba Fett stuff is coming.
So can we do a side topic here for a second? Maybe a controversial one that you guys don't know is coming, because it gets into our collecting and. Well, spoiler, that's what we're talking about tonight is collecting, and it's going to talk a lot about Star Wars toys. But the Book of Boba Fett stuff, there's been a lot of kerfuffle about the fact that they are marketing Boba Fett's ship, which we all grew up as knowing it was Slave One, and it is now on the box being put as Boba Fett's starship. Controversy or not? I mean, honestly, first of all, I can see the it's like we're not going to put Slave One on boxes from just a, just from a perception type of a deal. I mean, when I was working at Google, I mean, this isn't. I don't work for them anymore anyway. So, but they were making concerted effort to, for example, within their code, it's been traditional for developers that they would have master and slave relationships in code. That was just standard when you're coding, and they're making an effort to change their code to remove those labels and change it to like parent-child or something else that isn't, ugly. So I could see Star Wars, I could see Hasbro and Lucasfilm saying, no, we're not going to put slave on the box. But then there's also the side of it that only old farts like us know that it's called Slave One. Little kids know it as Boba Fett's ship. If you want to get a kid to buy, I mean, because I'm sure if we looked at, maybe it did say Slave One in parentheses or something on the box in 1983, but, I mean, it makes sense from a marketing standpoint. Like I said, hey kids, here's Boba Fett's ship.
Cool.
All of the above. It's you understand it to a point. You think that yes, we want to be very cautious with our brand. We don't want to be associated with insensitivity. So you understand those concerns. But I also feel like it would be good to get a perspective of somebody who's not like an old white man.
Good news, everyone! I'm in terrible pain.
So personally, I may just bow out of that one. But I do think it's like sort of flirting with, are we going too far? I don't know if we're going too far, but by the same token, I don't really care. I can't get hung up on stuff like that because like there's just so much good in the universe as it is. It's like, well, we're going to take away this one tiny little sliver of something.
Well, but here's the deal. Here's the deal. In how many times is the name Millennium Falcon dropped in the original trilogy? Bunch. So every kid knew what the Millennium Falcon was. You didn't know what Boba Fett's ship name was. I mean,
was never said.
Was never said. Heck, even Boba Fett's name wasn't said until Return of the Jedi. I mean, so I think it became one of these things and again, I don't want to get us into our topic too soon, but it's like the toys were made for kids back in the 70s and 80s. Then in like the late 90s and into the 2000s, I think the toys started getting, created for middle-aged, people, and so, so yeah, you put the technical name on it. But again, kids don't know that. So anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. So, but yeah, Dave, I think you're right. It's it would be interesting to have this conversation because I think it'd be cool. Fredo?
I was just gonna add right quick. I mean, the name is never mentioned in the original trilogy. It's not even mentioned when Jango Fett is piling in it throughout episode 2. The one thing that I think kind of ties into it, and it may be a discussion for another day, is just one where we start talking about canon. Just what is canon, what we consider canon, and how much, because the name came out of somewhere, whether it was the novelization or whether it was the toy maker giving it that name and everybody recognizing it, and just how much of it, how much of that canon must be carried with us. We kind of mentioned it a bit when we discussed the Legends universe months back, but it's a topic that I think it could be good to kind of discuss, just because how much of that is we tied to. I mean, look, when the ship was named, it was all in the Lucasfilm, and I don't even know if Lucasfilm was even considering it. Like I said, it never gets mentioned. It's not that important. It's important from the plot story of somebody chasing Han Solo and Princess Leia. But beyond that, it's how much of it of secondary stuff that we need to carry because it's what it was said back in 80 or 81 or 82 into the now, and it's written in stone versus. No, it's okay. We can say that's not its name, and it was never acknowledged.
And I mean, one of the first action figures I got was Walrus Man. That's what it said on the package was Walrus Man, and then in the late 90s, no, his name's Ponda Baba. It's like, well, it was Walrus Man, Anyway, we can get into that later. One last bit of opening BS, if you guys have not watched it, Muppets Haunted Mansion is a delight. And if it's not a home run, it is at least a standing triple. I mean, it was. Have you guys watched it yet?
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah, it was really good. We really liked it. Our daughter saw it first, and she's like, "We got to watch this together as a family." So it's like, "Okay, cool." And so we all sat down and watched it last night, actually, and we really liked it. Yeah, it's. Some of the Muppet stuff is a little hit or miss for me. Some of the recent Muppet stuff, it's
exactly.
The Muppet Show's fabulous. The older movies, I love them all. But once you got into the 90s or so, it started feeling a little hit or miss for me.
That's why I think I'm so
Muppet Treasure Island.
I think that's why I'm so surprised that I found this to be a home run because it felt like old Muppets. It went with, there was still some jokes that were there for adults, but it was like some of the newer Muppet stuff tried to play to, all the jokes playing to 40-year-olds. But no, it was just so good. It was just so good. So yeah, Fredo, you got to watch it.
I will. I gotta watch. There's a number of things I gotta watch, so I'm just gotta build time. So.
Right. Speaking of Fredo, we'll throw it to him for some Star Wars news.
Okay, so we'll start with happy news, and then we'll go into controversial news, and then we'll go back to happy news. So first happy news: congratulations to Katie Sackhoff. She got married last week. Apparently, she and longtime boyfriend partner Robert Gatsby got tied the knot. So, mazel tov.
Hooray! Congrats.
Hey, look. 2020 and 2021 have not been a source of much happiness and joy. So, wherever you can find it and get it, go get it.
I've been impressed by that, by people that find those kinds of things, like people that have given birth during the pandemic. I'm just incredibly impressed by stuff like that because it's just, as it is, things feel very daunting and difficult. And to put something like that above the crap, so to speak, it's like, okay, we're doing this thing. We're gonna have our joy. The world can suck it, basically. And so I'm all for it. I love it.
That should be the title of this episode. The world can suck it.
In other news, StarWars.com revealed that we're going to get 4 new fiction books next year. The titles and authors, let's see, we got Adam Christopher's Shadow of the Sith, Kirsten White's Padawan, which is going to be focusing on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. Mike Chen's going to be doing Brotherhood, which is about Obi-Wan and Anakin. And then there's going to be a short story collection book called Stories of Jedi and Sith, talking about the battle between good and evil. So there's supposed to be, some of them are going to be young adults. I believe Padawan's going to be young adult, which depicts Obi-Wan in the early days as a student of Qui-Gon Jinn. And then Adam Christopher's Shadow of the Sith is actually taking place after the Return of the Jedi, when Luke and Lando try to find Exegol. So it's interesting. They're trying to do their best to use the Exegol thing and make something out of it.
There's more to that, where it has to do with Lando's daughter and Ochi, and so they're it almost seems like, hey, let's try to shove the plot of Rise of Skywalker down their throat again, so they're not so mad at us, so we can explain some things that ticked them off. I don't know. I mean, it sounds like an interesting story. I mean, it is one of those things like Luke and I went on this adventure, but we'll tell you some other time. So this is when they're going to tell it. Now, I wanted to say
in summertime next year.
To Dave's point, about Visions, where it's like, how many times are they going to go to the well with Jedi? It's like that seems to be a systemic problem within Lucasfilm stories right now, because it's like, really, we got another book about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and we're going to have, we've had criminy 7 seasons of the Clone Wars to talk about Obi-Wan and Anakin, and now we're going to have a book, and maybe that book makes sense. It's going to lead us into the, or have some sort of, get us prepped for the Obi-Wan show, but it seems to be a systemic problem, if you see it as a problem, that they're just kind of stuck on Jedi
v. Sith.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you look at the list here, and it's just like, okay, Jedi, Sith, Jedi, so it's like, it's more of the same. And if you think it's a problem, then it's more of the same. It's like, can we get some character development of people who aren't Jedi, and can we get some of these stories involving people who don't have these special abilities? And I'd love to read more of that. I'd love to watch more of that. I think that part of what makes Star Wars this really cool, rich tapestry is all these different, unique, special characters. Like again, I'll go back to the action figure example that we've been talking about. It's like you got your little walrus man action figure, and he's not a Jedi. You're reenacting the cantina scene, or some other scene where he's getting into hijinks prior to the cantina, and so there's all these cool stories that you can tell. It doesn't have to be strictly that. Though I will say the Exegol stuff, I like it, but I also see through it, because I also understand that this is what they did with the prequels, which is like a lot of people were kind of confused about the prequels or dissatisfied, and so we're gonna tell more of that story so that you become more happy about that story overall, and you begin to learn more about these characters that we tried to establish in the movies, but maybe weren't as successful as we'd hoped for. And so I think like this is kind of the same thing. We're doing that now with the sequels, and more specifically with Rise of Skywalker. It's like we want to make sure that we lay groundwork and backstory so that people develop more of an affinity for that film. And people like, there's certain people that are affiliated with Star Wars, like Dave Filoni, who have done a great job of that, and I would trust them to continue to do that going forward. So again, I can't find fault with them trying to do that. I think it's smart.
Now I'm going to lead us into one of Fredo's upcoming bullets. You're going to be skipping one because the story that I want to hear at some point is Maz Kanata's, it's a story for another time of how she came to get Luke's lightsaber. Do you have anything to add on that, Fredo?
Well, yes. Actually, interestingly, about a week or so ago, Mark Hamill confirmed that in one of the the original script for Force Awakens, the opening scene of The Force Awakens was not the introduction of the First Order and Kylo Ren assaulting the village where Lord Tanseca was, but was instead a hand hurtling through the stratosphere, flesh and bone burning away, leaving behind only a lightsaber that impaled on the surface of an unnamed planet.
Yes!
The hand was, of course, Luke Skywalker's. Mark Hamill confirmed it on Twitter that was the original opening scene of The Force Awakens. Of course, it didn't come to be. He does joke, had the sequence been retained, I would have had bookended the cameos twice the screen time in The Force Awakens.
I would have earned twice the screen time. I love more.
I'm just imagining, I'm trying to picture the image of a hand, a cut off hand, burning away. You get nothing but bone, then that burns away. That might have been a bit too much for the younger crowd, but it would have been cool.
It probably would have been too much for the younger crowd, but it was definitely part of the original rumor mill. I think that there were actual reports that came out that said that this was going to be the opening scene, that this hand with this lightsaber hurtling through space was going to be the opening scene, and so it's really kind of fun to have Mark confirm it now.
I'm just thinking, okay, the last time we see that hand is when it's falling outside of Bespin. How did it get into space? Did it get launched by the Tabana gas? I mean, what happened? I'm trying to figure out the thoughts, and then I realize it's a Star Wars movie. Don't think about it like that.
You could have a lot of fun with just his dismembered hand, just traveling through the galaxy.
Getting into adventures.
Yeah, like on Robot Chicken or something. You could just have the story of his hand just traveling through all these random places.
Which, speaking of collecting and toys, does that mean we should have gotten a Hasbro action figure, whatever action figure, of just the hand and the lightsaber?
Hey, I've actually, I've got a Bespin Luke that the hand comes off. It's a magnet, so we can recreate that right now. I heard that rumor. I had heard that rumor long ago. I mean, before Force Awakens came out. I remember at the time thinking, God, that'd be so stupid. And hearing it again, I'm like, thank God they didn't put that in there. I don't know.
I mean, that might explain why in The Last Jedi he just chucked the lightsaber outside. Because if you imagine the opening scene is that, and then the final scene is Rey going, "Here's your lightsaber." Luke's gonna go, are you kidding me?
One of my favorite memes, though, is when when Rey is holding the lightsaber, and then Luke says, "There was a hand with it. Did you find the hand?" So anyway, I often wonder about this. Okay, so Mark Hamill confirms it. It's like, all right, but he's getting to the age where it could be your half senile uncle, Joe, who just, I did. I met, President Nixon, and you know what I mean. It's just like, is he actually confirming it, or is he just playing, or is it, did the myth become I don't know.
He could be having some fun with us. Yeah.
All right, JJ, what I want to see is I want to see the film of it, or there's got to be an animatic of it somewhere. So anyway,
there's a sequence of it somewhere. So
what I want to know is how did the hand not decompose over the course of 20 years or whatever? Until it landed all just basically down to nothing but bone essentially, and just was the vacuum of space somehow Star Wars science took over, and now you've got this hand preserved in space. I don't know. It makes no sense.
You know what this means? Whenever we get from a certain point of Force Awakens, the opening chapter has to be about the hand. I know who's gonna write that story, but there's gonna be a story about the hand.
Yeah, Yeah, we gotta talk to Brittany, fire off an email, and see,
Brittany,
and have her.
right about
Could do an
pitch
Adams
that
Family.
story.
You could do an Adams Family mashup where it's Thing and so.
Mhm. You mentioned Visions right quick. I'll just bring up quickly. The director of The Ninth Jedi, the short for Star Wars Visions, was interviewed in Japan, and he says that he'd love to have the chance to make it a full-length feature, and that he feels he has a complete story in place to tell. So there's some suggestion that possibly that they could take a look at that anime short as a pilot episode, so to speak. And but then I was thinking, there's a number of Vision shorts. You could say that you could say, okay, we saw one episode and we could see a few others out of it.
I almost feel like I have seen a quote from at least another creator that said something similar, which was like, "Yes, we have an idea for a fuller story." And again, if this is sort of their audition tape, cool, and it's like and it's on Disney to decide if who gets to go forward and with something a little bit longer and more detailed. That's great. I'd love that if they brought some of these creators back and let them go to town on this stuff.
And we'll just finish up right quick with Aaron's favorite story ever regarding Star Wars Prison.
Star Wars
Disney.
Prison.
Yeah, Galactic Star Cruiser. Apparently, tickets went on sale to Disney Vacation Club members and whatnot. And they, of course, they had numerous problems, calls reaching capacity for a 2-hour wait. The queue was a capacity. Apparently, the prices for the standard cabin were underestimated. The cost of a standard cabin for 2 adults was $5,200, not the $3,500 that they were mentioning weeks back. However, the maiden voyage for March 1st, 2022, sold out.
I never doubted that it was going to be a sellout at the beginning. What's going to be interesting is that what we're talking about a year from now, is it, is it still going to be that? I mean, is it going to be selling out, over and over again? The other thing is that we're, it's Disney's 50th, Disney World's 50th anniversary this year. So I think ticket sale, and we're coming out of the pandemic. So I think a lot of people have they have vacations to take and money to spend probably, but it will be interesting, like I said, a year from now. So sorry, I'll be glasses half empty again there.
Oh, no, it's totally fun. I mean, realistically, everybody knows, though, particularly when it comes to popular stuff in Star Wars, there's always going to be a rush by some people, super fans, collectors, the like, who want to be the first to that experience. And then there's a natural come down process where things adjust. It has to.
I'm sorry, I'm not to belabor this whole thing again, but the thing that's going to be getting kind of, because they're going to be people like me, and I've seen they're like really excited. The people who are, like I said, in the 500 first, do the cosplay thing, and this is like, wow, this is like nirvana for them. This is going to be awesome. But then all of a sudden you're going to go to this Galactic Star Cruiser where you're going to have that group of people. Then you're going to have half the group of people that were there with their kids. And it's going to get annoying on one end and creepy on another. You know what I mean? And it's going to be kind of like you go to when Urban South had the bouncy house. It's like, I'm 47 years old. I really want to go in the bouncy house, but there's a lot of kids in there. And it's like, no, I'm going to look weird. So you relent from going into the bouncy house,
The bouncy house is not for you, Aaron.
Well, it's in a bar, Dave. I mean, the bar is not for kids either. So, it's like,
Now, to be fair, you're in New Orleans. So
kids and bars is not number New Orleans.
Kids and bars, not a weird thing here.
But you know what I mean? It's just going to be, so I wonder, is there going to become this like, I want to see the video of the first Karen to say, to some 25-year-old is like, why are you here anyway? This is for kids. And the 25-year-old is, dressed as Qui-Gon Jinn and wanting to go play with lightsabers. It's just going to be, it's going to be weird. Sorry.
Now, I was just going to say, last week I went to see The Who, the Mongolian metal band that did the song for Jedi Fallen Order.
Did they have
Awesome
the
show.
bouncy
If
house?
you get a chance to see him. Yeah, but it was interesting was, I mean, there was in the middle of all that, there was a mosh pit. And I'm like, okay, let me get to the other side behind this wooden column so that, yep, there go people flying, because obviously some people are not interested in being in a mosh pit. And, you know, with my bad back and my bum ankle, my moshing days are over.
Did you have moshing days?
Huh?
Did you have moshing
one or
days?
two when I was younger and dumber? But the point being, if I felt uncomfortable moshing with 25-year-olds, I cannot imagine 47-year-old Aaron in the bouncy house with the.
I'll give you another example. I was in San Francisco with a couple coworkers, and we were in Japantown. Maybe I've told you the story before. We were in Japantown, met up with my friend Kevin. We met up with some of his friends for lunch, and they wanted to go. They went to this anime shop, and there's my buddy Jared and I. We were both, in our mid 40s, and there was a bunch of little teenage girls running all around, and it's like, do you want to go wait outside? Yeah, I want to go wait outside. It was just like, felt I don't belong here. So even though anime is not just for 13-year-old girls, don't at me on Twitter, but you know what I mean? You get into that situation where it's like, there's an audience at all age levels, but at some point it's just like, I don't know. So
I got a story of a buddy of mine. We went to a Toasters show, and this was maybe 2 years back. So, we're past our prime. The Toasters are past their prime. Anybody going to a Toasters show is past their prime, basically. And so we go to this thing, and they sounded great. The band was wonderful. But at a point during the show, because they're a ska band, you start seeing people skanking a little bit in the middle of the room. And my buddy's like, I kind of want to go out there. I kind of want to go do that. And I'm like, you need to slow down. We're not 20 years old anymore. We're not going to be able to go out there and skank.
Hey, what's up, fellow young people?
Exactly.
Yeah. No,
we got jobs and tax responsibilities.
Oh, it's funny though. Is that it for the news? Because
that's it for the news.
Because that's kind of a transition. Like, act your age a little bit, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should take that as a slap, but so,
that's going to be my contribution to the story.
Well,
it's not about you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's so our main topic. I got to thinking about collecting, and not just Star Wars, but just collecting in general. And because this past Saturday I was at the St. Tammany Collectors Convention, and 501st was trooping. Had a really good turnout at 501st. We actually had 2 AT-AT drivers, and I was in my Snow Trooper, and there was a Darth Vader. Couple TKs, a TIE Fighter pilot. Then the Rebel Legion was there as well. The coolest part of it was the Droid Builders Club was there. So they had all sorts of, they had a mouse droid and they had an R2 unit. And every time I see that, I geek out. But as we're getting set up and, in my uniform, and this guy comes up, and it's an older gentleman, and he's got a royal blue Kenner polo on. And then I also noticed he's got a 501st badge on the other side. And I noticed the name, and that's when I put 2 and 2 together. Jim Swearingen, he was the guy who designed the original Star Wars toys. Like, we're talking for Kenner, like we're talking late 70s, early. He designed those figures. And so he was there. He was doing a panel, and he was also signing stuff. But he's an honorary member of the 501st. 501st will do that for some of these for actors or people can, their contributions to Star Wars as a whole. And he came over to our booth just because, he has an affinity for the 501st. Well, anyway, so like I tweeted, I said, if anybody is to blame, it's for me, it's him. Because he designed these things that I fell in love with right away. But I when I met him though later, I watched I saw him just walking through the collectors' booths and looking at rows and rows and rows of action figures. I mean, not just Star Wars stuff. I mean, it was all genres and everything, but he's just looking through all this stuff. And I went up to him and I said, Jim, did you think when you designed these figures in 1977, 78, whatever it is, that this is what would happen? Because really it was, I mean, yeah, there was the G.I. Joe figures, the 12-inch stuff and everything, but really action figure collecting and the action figure line, just, I guess, just action figures in general took off because of Star Wars and Kenner. And he said, no, he said, we're just making toys. That was our job. We just had to make these toys. Had no idea that, then to see people collecting these things. But like I said, just watching him look at these, I was kind of getting into his head of like, wow, what I started. So I guess it got to me, thinking about why I do collect stuff. What do I collect? What don't I collect? And so, so I guess that's what I just want to talk about, because there's also, Jim Swearingen also is part of, if you have Netflix, there's an awesome series on there, The Toys That Made Us. And he is there, like the second episode is the Star Wars episode, and he is interviewed extensively in that. And actually part of that episode, they have a sociologist, talking about why people collect. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I guess, so let's just kind of go around the horn. I mean, was there anything, not even Star Wars, let's just say anything that you collected, maybe that, and I guess how do we want to define collect? Maybe had more than just one of, you know what I mean? Was there something that the new one is out, I got to go get it, or I really want to go get it? Well, did you guys have anything like that growing up?
Yeah. I think probably most of us did. I can give you specific examples. Tons of action figures as a kid, and again, like, collect is kind of a loose term with that, because we were as children, we were limited by funds, limited by what our parents would buy for us, and so forth. And so, but like for me, it was like I want as many Transformer toys as I can get my hands on. I want as many Star Wars action figures as I can get my hands on. I want as many He-Man figures as I can get my hands on. And I think eventually I went as far as the Ninja Turtles with it too. It's like, semi-collecting Ninja Turtles. But when you talk about like being more of a completionist, I think as a kid, what's more achievable and more appealing in that regard is sports cards, and comic books, and because you can get like the complete set, like I've got all of this year, or I've got this run of this particular comic
and
story.
They release like one comic book a month rather than like 12 of them in a line all at once. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was $1,
Right.
and it was like $1 a month, and you go and you get your comic, and then you're good. If you could find it, that was the trick sometimes, because sometimes there'd be a limited run on something, not really intentionally ever at that stage of things, like trying to drum up scarcity. That's been more of a recent phenomenon, at least to my knowledge. But I remember very vividly. So I was collecting Transformers comic books, and I started around issue 47 or so. That's when I got into it, and so then I had to back collect everything, and go to flea markets and old shops and things like that, and try to get all the old stories. And eventually did that and got all caught up, and got up to like issue. Okay, so now this is the part where I'm gonna like struggle. I think it was issue 71, and for whatever reason, this was printed by Marvel. For whatever reason, they did a limited run of that month of that issue, and they just maybe they didn't have the budget for it. Things were tight that month. They had to tighten their belts. Whatever. I didn't get that issue in Emporia, Kansas, BFE, as I like to say. So I was kind of SOL on that issue for like a decade until I got it as a gift one year from my brother. He ponied up the $20 or whatever it cost him to buy that one issue. But I eventually got the complete run of the first set, the all 80, I think it was 80 issues. And then I got some of the side runs too. And so that was my thing. I had that thing, and that was, again, like I said, it was on average $1 a month, and you had to try to get to the store on a certain date because you knew that was when the thing was going to get issued, and so you wanted to make sure that you got it. And that was prescient on my part.
So why
that was the one issue that I couldn't get.
So why Transformers? What was it that was like, I've got to, you started at 47. What made you then go back and get the previous 46? What was it that, you had to do this?
I read that first issue and thought, this is an interesting story. And I liked the characters, and I liked the direction that the story took. I thought it was more grown up than the old cartoon series. We all watched the cartoon series, and you go back and you watch it now, and it's kind of like watching paint dry. It's just, it's like, oh my God. They're stealing Energon again. They're going to an oil refinery this time. And so, and they're going to talk about how they're conquering the world. This was a lot more refined than that. The dialogue was strong. And so, like, for me, it was the story. I got pulled into the story. I was like, I need the whole story. And it became not even just, but like you said, to your point, it wasn't just about the story. There was kind of a compulsion to it of, well, I want to collect this now. And this, I think the biggest draw for me was the achievability of it. I was like, I can do this. I can get every issue. I know that I can do that because, again, it's not a huge financial commitment.
Fredo, did you have anything that you collected as a kid?
I'm trying to think back. Part of the issue for me was that a lot of having to immigrate meant leaving 99% of my stuff when I was a kid back in Nicaragua. So when you move here, I only came in with half a suitcase. So nothing from that time made it out here. When I started working, at first, I think as a kid here, it was like baseball cards and football cards, Topps, Ultra Deck, that kind of thing. Yeah, at one point, a Tom Glavine rookie card I just got ink all over because that's what happens. But then I got into comic books when I started working, part-time at the local Taco Bell. And there was something like that. It was just the opportunity to read and that you can collect something and you can go back next month. I still remember Frank's comic book store down the street from where I grew up. And me and my brother would just go down there. And if by that point, this is the early 90s, you could, kind of tell the store owner, hey, I'm interested in this series and that series. And they would make sure to put your name down that you're going to buy that comic book and make sure you'd have a copy. They would order like 50, but they would know 20 were already bought and paid for, basically. And so you just show up and pick up your comic books and off you go. And it was interesting because I stopped collecting them once I went to college because I couldn't bring them with me. And there's somewhere in my parents' house, there's about 3 tubs full of X-Men comic books, Spider-Man comic books, a lot of the Image stuff. I have all the original first edition run Spawn from Todd McFarlane, which probably worth a pretty penny now. And I think I got through like issue 25 with them, maybe issue 30 with them. Anyway, but by that point, I mean, it used to be $1 per, but by that point, we're talking about 95 or so. They've gotten to the point where the comic books are now $1 or $2 for the normal issue and $3 for the special edition. And this is when the comic book speculation wave hit and nearly took the whole industry down because they're doing the variant covers and whole new exciting special editions. And there's a new issue, first issue, a new first issue. But so that was kind of what I did. It was mostly like a kid teen. It was mostly that. It was trading cards at first, and then that morphed into comic books. Because and really, it wasn't even that I was getting them because I was interested in collecting them. It was more, I want to read the story. And a service like Marvel Universe didn't exist then. If I could have gotten them in an iPad just every month, I would have, and read to my heart's delight, I would have done that. But I didn't get a chance to do it then, so I bought them.
Yeah, so, first of all, I've said on this show before, I'll never. One of the memories I have just totally vivid in my brain was when we got our first Star Wars figures, and we didn't have a lot as kids either. I mean, Mom and Dad didn't have a lot of money. I had friends who had like all the stuff, and you loved going to stay the night at their house because they had all the things, the Death Star and everything else. I always wanted, I always wanted Star Wars figures. I dug G.I. Joe as well. Transformers, the Transformer toys were really cool as well. And when I look back at it as a kid, it kind of gets into what the sociologist talks about in the Netflix series, is that, he said a science fiction, like a sports fan, if you have a really good chance of going and seeing your favorite team play a game, or multiple games. You have that. There's an opportunity, year after year, week after week to go see this. As like a Star Wars fan, you're waiting, 3 years between movies. And then as we were growing up, there was also, VCRs didn't come until a little bit later. So you couldn't just go to into the video store and pop in the movie all the time. So these action figures, allowed you to keep that experience alive, And I think you get into, I want more toys so that I can, create more of these, recreate more of these scenarios. I don't know how many times I took my Millennium Falcon and bashed the radar dish off up against something after I saw, Return of the Jedi. So he says that there's that aspect of it. So these things that we collect as kids, we get to recreate. And it's really, I think, the imagination of a child is off the charts. I mean, so it's like they'll have, it's no problem to have, G.I. Joe and Star Wars. I mean, we were doing the crossover events way before, anybody else ever was, because, we had, like I said, Superman, G.I. Joe, and Star Wars all in the same universe. And we were invading my sister's, Barbie dream house, So the imagination aspect of it, I think, and again, you want more of these things because you can create more scenarios. Now I'm going to fast forward to as an adult. This is maybe where Dave's going to start, hammering down on me. But through college, I, didn't have any Star Wars stuff really through college, anything. And it was when The Power of the Force 2 came out in 96. Because as like the Christmas before Brittany and I got married, so I guess it would have been 95, my friend Mike got me like 5 of those figures. It was like Darth Vader, Luke, Han, as some of the original power, because they rebooted the Star Wars line. And he just got it for me as kind of like a lark, kind of a joke, or just like, hey, this is kind of cool. You need to have it. And that made me realize how much I dug Star Wars. It rekindled this. And as I'm graduating college, as I am, getting married, as I am going out into, the real world on my own, this allowed me a little bit of that Peter Pan, to keep one foot, not allowing myself to become a fuddy-duddy, But then also as part of it, this is when the chase part of it comes in, because now I do have a little bit, I didn't have much at the time, but I had a little bit more expendable income. So it's like when I'm reading about this, where there's a variant in this one figure. And so you're going to every Target and Walmart looking for that one thing, and it wasn't so that I could sell it to somebody for $100. It's just so I could say I found it. It was like a treasure hunt, That wasn't the case as kids. It was like, if you wanted a Luke, you found it. It was not that big a deal, So that was kind of entertaining, to where can I find it? And so I'm getting a long story. So, but then it is like my collection now, I do not collect everything Star Wars. It's like one of my biggest pet peeves is when, like, if it's really nice when somebody does it, I will say that, it's like they're thinking of me. They know that I like Star Wars. They got this Burger King toy. Here you go. My students did this all the time. And so it's like, I this is not what I want. It has to be something that's like, I like finding stuff that maybe isn't available everywhere, or generally it's for the original saga. The prequel stuff doesn't turn my crank all that much. I've got a lot of prequel stuff, but it's mainly that. So what I'm getting at is it's allowing, I need to have that foot in the past of when things weren't old and, when, I didn't have to worry about health insurance. I didn't have to worry about parents dying. I didn't have to worry about, my checkbook we're at, $10 at the end of the month. I needed to have one foot in there. So like I said, that's why I said a psychiatrist could have a field day with me, because every time I get something, it makes me feel, like I said, just, okay, I can escape. Sorry, that was a long monologue.
No, it's all right, man. And I would take the only issue I would take with any of that is when you were trying to kind of say, well, it's more of an adult thing, the thrill of the treasure hunt, which I'm like, no, because that treasure hunt was there for me when I was a kid, especially with things like football cards. And I told the story about trying to get that comic every month. It's like you got to beat your possible competition to the store to get the thing. But yeah, there were a lot of figures that I recall, like, trying to get to the store and trying to find them, and like sometimes they'd be in like some big huge mess, like bargain bin style, where it was just like a free for all and you couldn't find anything. Like I think about like the Voltron effect, where it was like all the different Voltron figures would combine together to become the big Voltron, and you had to have each of the figures to
and isn't that
the big Voltron?
Isn't that a great marketing thing? Because Transformers did it too when they had the Constructicons or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
Where you had to get all of them to form one huge. It's that's when, like I said, that was the late 80s. They started, okay, we can get people, sucked into some of this stuff.
Oh yeah. And a lot of that was deliberate. I'm sure it was just sort of a neat, cool idea at first. Like, ooh, these things combine together and they make a big robot, but then eventually it was like, oh, they're going to need all of them. So they're going to want to try to get all of them and they'll buy more. Yeah.
And it's also interesting because I have a lot of Star Wars action figures, but I don't remember the last time that I bought one. I don't remember, it's anymore. My collection has shifted to it's like what, Brittany and I, we stopped getting each other presents for Christmas and birthdays and anniversaries and stuff like that because we want to spend that money on experiences. We want to go on trips. We want to go to concerts. We want to, experiences. And so that's where my collecting has shifted, is that, like, I was walking around the St. Tammany Collectors Convention. There was a lot of cool stuff, but nothing that made me want to go grab my wallet and go get it. Now, I almost, if I hadn't have gotten a picture taken with him with my own phone, I would have paid the money and got Jim Swearingen to sign something. So he had pictures that he was signing and stuff like that. Because, again, there's that connection. It's like my favorite things. I have an Instagram post from a couple of years ago where I started doing this like kind of 10-day deal of just my favorite things that I've collected. And a lot of it was autographs, because then there's that connection that I had with Peter Mayhew for 30 seconds, or that connection that I had with, Kenny Baker for 30 seconds. And, those are very meaningful to me. So I see that's where and again, I think I said the psychiatrist had put me on the couch because I know it is escapism. It is, call it Peter Panism, like I said, if you want to, but it also reminds me of what my grandmother always said, you're only as old as you allow yourself to be. I think it's okay if you want to go bounce in a bouncy house. I don't think it's okay for you to push the kids out of the way so you can go bounce in the bouncy house. If you're collecting, you don't. I always thought it was a dirtbag move for these, guys at Target who would call their friends and they'd go and dig through the boxes of figures before they got on the shelf, so that they could, have all these things. So everybody's stuck with, the crap figure, because I do think that's garbage. So is there anything you guys collect as adults? I still am going with my Star Wars stuff, but Fredo, I've seen you get more than one bobblehead.
Oh yeah. No, I got a few Funkos actually, and a few bobbleheads here and there. Usually it's related to an event, or if a game I went to, or an experience I went to. Kind of like it's more having to do with latching onto there was an experience and you want to have something that reminds you of it. If it's a trip or something like that. I'm trying to think. During the pandemic, I just started rebuilding a few Legos. Nothing major, but a few here and there. And then just recently started getting back on getting albums, like vinyl. I'm like, I have less than 5 or 6 right now, but I'm trying to do that kind of thing. It's surprising because I think in part, a lot of times there's a push-pull as an adult as to how much stuff do you really want to have, and how much value do you want to put. Like there was a point in time, like at the start of the pandemic, where I was just like, okay, let me help out friends that I know, people that I know that are artists and struggling. And next thing I know, I have no space in my walls to hang anything else. So all of a sudden the stuff is getting shoved to the side, and you're like, okay, that's not really appropriate. But you do it with good intentions. But I'm trying to think in terms of collecting, like, yeah, I got a few Funkos. I think more than anything, like if it's anything I want to collect at this point in life, it's more the experience, like you were saying. It's the going someplace, it's the doing something. It's the, okay, how was it, like a few weeks back, our cars got broken into, and I'm more upset about the fact that the guys took my little coin purse that I bought at Plaza Garibaldi in Mexico City, which had like $3 in quarters, than there was the fact that they busted a $250 window.
Yeah.
The window is a window. I can replace that. Now that little coin purse, I gotta go back down to Mexico City to go get that sucker. And again, it's tied to an experience, tied to stuff, and something I think that's why you end up collecting stuff. It's you want to retain a certain aspect of the memory of the moment that you felt with that, whether it was, not just get to the psychoanalysis, but just that experience, that sensation that it makes you feel. You know, it's a good. It can be a good one. It can also be a negative one when you got, like I said, guys calling buddies to go. No, save up all the Mr. Whatever action figures to the side, and we'll put them up on eBay and charge $500. The other thing that I think a lot of is Mardi Gras throws, which I think everybody does at this point in New Orleans. You know, everybody got their shoe, everybody got their grill, everybody got their coconut. You know, and I always feel kind of sad when I see people posting all that stuff on eBay or something. I'm like, you know, to a topic, you know, that's a topic that Dave and I were discussing earlier, that relationship between the creator and the audience. And it's, if somebody hands you something that they made for themselves and gave it to you, and then it feels kind of gauche or kind of, you know, tasteless. You just got to go, eBay, $100, buy it for me. You know?
So Dave, our alarm has gone off, but is there anything that you, as an adult, have latched onto?
Well, the emotional side of it that Fredo was talking about is something that I wanted to touch on, because I just think that that's so important. My experience. So Aaron, you were talking about the older we get, the more we want experiences, and Fredo, you were talking about the older we get, the more crap we have. We don't have room for anything else. And so I think, like, for me, it's very much that. Like, I love when I can have something that will remind me of a particular experience. Like, we have Jazz Fest posters. That's a big one for us, right? We go to a music festival, we'll get the poster. It's like we've run out of wall space, and we don't have everything framed, but it's like there's still kind of a bit of a compulsion there to say, like, well, let me get that thing, because that will that's something tangible that will remind me of this event and this experience and this positive sensation that I had. That was a good day. We were sitting out in the sun, listening to music. I had my mango freeze. It was a good day, you know? So it's like that poster kind of brings those things back for you. But the thing I was going to talk about a little bit was just, and I poked fun earlier because it was something that when you asked us this topic and you said, do you still collect as an adult? And part of me was like, well, I don't collect Star Wars stuff as an adult, really. I have the lightsaber, but again, that was an experience, right? Mm-hmm. I had that experience at the park with my son, and that lightsaber takes me back to that. But I think back, like, why don't I do these things as an adult? It's not because I think they're childish. It's because somebody at some point told me they were childish. And then I internalized that, and that's what defined my behavior going forward.
So that's really interesting that you say that, because there's Sir Ken Robinson has a great, just find stuff that he's talking about education on YouTube. But he was talking about divergent thinking. And like, for example, divergent thinking is like, you give somebody a paperclip and say, imagine all the different things you can do with this with a paperclip. And they said actually that kids score at genius levels in divergent thinking because they don't put the parameters around things. Like when you just said a paperclip, you didn't say the paperclip couldn't be 200 feet tall, made of foam rubber, so they are so creative with this. And they said, as they test these kids for divergent thinking, they see that their scores go down the older they get. Mm-hmm. So we do, as a society, and by the way, I also want to point out that there is something, there's a big statement to be made about how, it's this American consumerism. I gotta have everything, there's part of that as well. But we do, to your point, it's like somebody told you to put away childish things. I always hate it when people throw out that Bible quote. It's like, go read more of the Bible than that one. I put away childish things. It's like, so you have to grow old and die is what we're telling people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the person I want to be is like the lady we saw at Finn's a couple of weeks ago who's celebrating her 75th birthday, having beer and dancing outside of Finn's. You know, it's like, that's the person I want to be. I want to be the person that, you know, that's, he was celebrating his, like, I think it was his 80th birthday at Pat O'Brien's. He was having a hurricane with his son watching the piano bar. This was several years ago. You know, it's why you can get older, but you don't have to grow old. And so if, you know, yeah, but you're right. Somebody tells you that you got to worry about adult things now. So
you know, and again, I think my relationship with my parents is complicated, and I think a lot of people feel the same way about their own parents. And like, they did a good job of kind of making sure that I didn't want for things, right? But they also had this very traditional mindset about certain things. It's like, you can't play with toys anymore. Aren't you too old for that? You know, like those kinds of comments, and those things would affect you. And for me personally, there was a reckoning that eventually had to be made, where I had to be comfortable in my own skin. It's like, I'm comfortable with this stuff. I like this stuff. There's nothing wrong with liking this stuff. And so that's part of it for me. And so I thought, let me make sure that I address that. But like, I come back to Fredo with like the Muse's shoe. Like I think we've all gotten into some sort of scrape with somebody on a parade route where somebody's like elbowing you out of the way and trying to like take your face off to catch a Mardi Gras throw.
Or all you want is one damn coconut, and the same person keeps going to every float going by and getting 2 coconuts at a time and keep going and dumping them into their, you know, bag. It's like, spread the wealth.
That's going to be the one.
You know?
That's going to be the one that's going to be selling them all online later on.
Yeah, so
it's ridiculous. I mean, like Mardi Gras is a perfect example of this stuff because, like, is there any sort of intrinsic value? I mean,
doubloons.
Art,
people just want doubloons because they're going for a complete set of, you know, name parade crew here. You know, yeah, that's huge.
And there's something going on there. You know, the psychology of it. Like, if I get a thing that I consider to be special,
then I'm
that
special.
Makes me special.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe how far is that gonna take you? It's not. It's you know, and the collecting side of it, I think like there is a thrill and there's a rush and there's excitement. It's like the treasure hunt aspect. I'm with you on that. It's like, yes, I got the thing that I was looking for. I was hunting for this thing and I got it. And there's an adrenaline and there's an excitement. And then you remember those things too. We talked about creating these memories and trying to, you know, hold on to these good memories. Those are good memories. You remember them.
By the way, I thought of you at the convention, Dave, because there was one booth that was selling. They had a bunch of original Nintendo cartridges.
Oh man, that market is so bad right now. Like that, everything's overpriced because the pandemics. Everybody got into retro gaming over the pandemic, so everything's overpriced in retro gaming. FYI, to anybody listening to this right now, if you're thinking, I remember this game of my youth, I'm going to go back and find it. Well, you're going to have a hard time. And it might be really pricey, and you may be disappointed. I'm letting you know right now. But yeah, you know, like those things, like, oh, the treasure hunt. I'm going to go find the thing. I got the thing. I'm excited about this thing that I got. And that's awesome because, again, those memories you keep with you. I remember, and again, we'll probably need to shut this down soon, but I got the Super Nintendo Classic when it came out. Because at that point, I had nothing like video gamey really at all. I think we had a PS2, and I think that was it, like from when I was like 25. And I think that was the only thing that we had. And so it's like, okay, the Super Nintendo Classic comes out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember all those games. I love those games. I'm gonna get this thing. So I had to go there. I had to go to Target, get in a line, get a like special ticket, and like wait there at like 7 a.m. for the store to open with my special ticket to go get the thing. But I'm never going to forget that memory of sitting there with these other people who were my age, who remembered the Super Nintendo from when they were kids. And they were like, yes, I'm here for the same reason. Or I'm here for my boyfriend. Or I'm here for my wife. And there was one guy, I'll never forget. He's come sprinting through the car garage with a baby carrier. Like he's like running with this baby to get in line to get a Super Nintendo. And I'm just like, man, like that memory of that guy running through the garage. And again, I was like, I don't think I would take it that far. I don't think I would run with my child through a car garage, but I'm appreciative of that guy existing because I have that story to tell now, and it's like burned into my memory of this guy with the baby like getting his Super Nintendo. It's so fun.
We're going to give Fredo the last word here in a second, but I do have to say that getting back to your point about how somebody at some point told you you can't do it, whether it's societal pressures or you're growing up, so you got to put away toys. One of the best things about becoming an adult and is when you get to the point of where it's like, I could give a rat's furry butt about what you think about me. I want that Darth Vader action figure because it's cool. I don't care. I got a job. I got a wife. I got, it's like, it just, you think I'm a geek? Sit and spin, buddy. There's a point you reach an age where it's like, you don't care. You know what I mean? So that is a good thing about becoming an adult. So, Fredo, I'll give you the last word on all this. You've been very patient.
So, no, just to bring it right back to Star Wars. And actually, I was just reminded, I was outside of a Toys R Us in Memphis, Tennessee in May, I want to say it was May 4th or 5th, 1999, which was when all the Phantom Menace toys were going to go on sale. I think I remember, I probably have buried somewhere. I've got a few of the little racers, the pod racers, but the little rape toys, I didn't want to get any. I was at that point, honestly, I was not interested in like buying but there were people in there who were just hoovering up all the toys. I'm like, it's midnight. Why are you buying all these toys? But that was part of the experience, and part of me always thinks back to that experience, and then all the people who stood outside in line to watch the movie. And I always have a joke with my brothers that whatever movie you're excited about, just know that in a couple of years time, you're gonna find it at the $7.50 or $5 bin at Walmart. You have to have a bit of perspective that, it should, when you're collecting, when you're getting stuff, some stuff will go up in price. If you're getting it because you're trying to be a speculator, a collector because of financial merit, you may be disappointed. You may not. I don't know. Depends on what you're after. But if you're doing it because you like what you're doing, hey, awesome. It's your money. You're an adult. You pay what you will. I think the bigger key, though, it's always to kind of have a proper perspective. Like, don't run through a garage with your child just so you can get a Super Nintendo. You have emulators. That there will be bigger and better. There's always bigger and better coming down the line. So,
I'm not even judging that guy.
No. But but it's along the lines of, wait a minute. At some point, you have to be able to put it in the proper frame of saying, okay, this is valuable. I know where I've wanted it. I've been hunting after it, and I really covet it. But if my loved one is ill, or if there's an accident, I'm not running no kid over to get a toy or to get a ticket or to get an event, because that's not really the point of any of this. It's supposed to be something that's positive and good for you. But if it consumes you, it's kind of like the dark side. If it consumes you, you end up being the thing you swore to
agent
destroy.
Of evil. Yeah.
Exactly. Dovetail off that real briefly. I think there's a mindset to collecting which is sort of at odds with itself, which is the best memories that we create for ourselves are when passions run high and you're like, wow, I really remember this thing, and it's experiential. And like, I remember going to the store with my brother and we did this thing and we got the thing that we were after and it was so cool, you know. And that's where you get the thrill, the excitement of it, the treasure hunt side of it. But then if there's an actual like logic to it, that's how you're going to have your quote unquote success with it. Because to your point, Fredo, you mentioned this, there's an ebb and a flow to all of this where people's nostalgia tends to run high at the same time. And so I'm really nostalgic for X. Oh, well, so are, you know, a million other people. So now's not the best time to buy X because a million other people are super nostalgic for this thing right now too. And so, like I said, you're kind of at odds with yourself at times with if you're thinking about it in terms of collecting. I'm going to get the most enjoyment out of it when my passion is highest, but my passion is highest when it shouldn't be for me financially. You know, like I'm going to take a hit in the wallet. So, you know, and that's how people make money in this. That's why it's an industry.
It's Aaron standing at the Lucasfilm gift shop going, how much should I really spend here?
Yeah, well, you know, and that's the thing is that so I said we're going to end this, but so now I get the last word. In that gift shop, they told us, they said everything on this side you can get online or in other department stores, blah, 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 blah. Everything on this side you can only get in this room. And I'm like, screw that side. I'm going over to this side of the room because, you know, who cares if I got a shirt that you can get at Target in the Lucasfilm, you know, company store. I've got a Lucasfilm water bottle. Never going to drink water out of it. But the fact that is I could only buy that water bottle in the company store at Lucasfilm. I mean, so that sits in its case, in a case, you know, it's like, and I'll never forget that day. So if you guys collect anything, hit us up online. Let us know what you collect, why you do it. Let's all get on the psychiatrist's couch because I think that's the interesting part of it is like, why do you collect? And yes, I think we have discerned that Aaron has issues, but anyway, I will say the most frivolous buy I ever did was that sail barge back there. But it was like, I was going to kick myself in the butt if I didn't get it. And it is kind of cool. But anyway, so yeah, let us know on Twitter, on Facebook. What do you collect? Why? Like I said, we'd love to know. We'd love to be bothered at work. So yeah, otherwise we will say who dat.
Who dat?
Yeah.
And everybody have a great week.
McConkey.